she said, I'm a hoe.
Right,
not
exactly.
a sex worker.
That's powerful because you described in almost street language what's going on, survival sex and everything else. You've written over 5,000 posts on homelessness.
That doesn't count the 14 or so years before the Chronicle. His brother read that story online and said, Jesus, that's my brother. I haven't seen him in 7 years. He calls me and says, help me find him. And I can't give away the end of the book.
I consider you the Steven Spielberg of homeless journalism.
Because homeless people have wonderful bullshit detectors. They can tell if you're just there to grab a quote. Like
So
that.
you would sleep out with people?
The way that I was able to sleep out alongside folks is, for one, I'd slept outside before. I got thrown out of the house when I was 16. Slept in a field just real briefly, and then I got an unfinished garage to live in. You'll see this in the book that I wrote. But the island was really wonderfully condensed example of how desperate life can become when you're on the very, very bottom.
Kevin Fagan was a journalist for the San Francisco Chronicle for 32 years. He's seen homelessness in San Francisco from the 80s, the 90s. Now, we talk about those changes. We talk about the Tenderloin, how it was and how it is today. He even shares about how they would sleep out on one of those concrete triangles with a group of homeless people. It was called Homeless Island. Just amazing stories. Kevin's new book, The Lost and the Found, A True Story of Homelessness, Found Family and Second Chances, is published by Simon Schuster. This is a podcast for journalists. Kevin's insights into covering homelessness are priceless. This is a podcast for you, people who like powerful stories. This is a podcast for everyone. So please share and let's get into the interview. So this is an honor because I consider you the Steven Spielberg of homeless journalism.
Oh, jeez. Thank you.
I think you said earlier today you've written over 5,000 posts on homelessness.
Yeah, articles for the Chronicle. And that doesn't count the 14 or so years before the Chronicle.
Wow.
It's been a long career.
So take me to the beginning. How did you start on the homelessness beat?
I got thrown out of the house when I was 16. As some kids do. And we grew up mostly poor. My dad was in college. You'll see this in the book that I wrote. So we were on student salary, and Mom, we had 3 kids. It's a fairly common story. When I left home, I slept in a field just real briefly, and then I got an unfinished garage to live in. I cleaned houses for $80 a month, and the rent was $50 a month in the garage where they let me, I built my own furniture.
That gives you 30, whopping $30.
You learn to live within your means, or at least I did.
Right.
And it worked. Eat a lot of beans in Velveeta. It was good.
Prices were a lot lower back then, too.
They were, yeah. And today that $30 would probably be, more.
You can't even get a Subway foot long.
Yeah. So, but I put myself through junior college and then 4-year college and wound up sleeping in my car for a little while until I got my shit together. And through all that, I had this burning desire to be a journalist. That's what I was going to do. My mom, who was a tough lady, had been in the Navy and was a Navy journalist and told me stories when I was a little kid. Yeah.
Wow.
She always said it was the best job in the world, and she was kind of pissed off when she had to leave the Navy and her career to become a mom and a wife. Yeah. It was the 50s. But she told me this one story in particular that stuck out, interviewing prisoners of war in the Korean War who had this one guy in particular who escaped a prison camp and had to crack the bones off his toes in the snow so he could actually run better.
Oh, my gosh.
And I thought, that's the kind of story I want to do. I want something that really tells.
Right.
And so when I started my career as a journalist, you write what you know. And so I knew what it was like to be poor. I knew what it was like to have to sleep outside. I spent, I don't know how, a couple of years collectively as a street musician in Australia, New Zealand, Europe.
Oh, wow.
And sleeping in doorways and alleys. Busking. I loved it. Just loved it.
What was your gig? What did you play?
I was guitar and singer-songwriter guy. Yeah. And I've written a lot of songs by now.
Awesome.
Too. I didn't mind traveling rough because it was kind of fun. You show up in town, you throw open your case. I could make a couple $100 at lunch. Yeah. Get yourself a place to sleep, move on. get stuck hitchhiking, sleep in the road. It was an adventure to me. And the difference for me with that was that I knew I wasn't going to be doing that forever.
Right.
I was going to go back and get a house.
I consider homelessness absence of choice.
Yes.
True homelessness.
As homelessness grows, people are getting frustrated and they're pushing for laws that criminalize homelessness, which will only make the problem worse. Invisible People reaches more people, educating them on homelessness than all other homeless sector nonprofits and campaigns combined. But we do it on a limited budget. We don't have the funding they do. We are mostly funded by individual donations. And now that the economy is struggling, individual donations are disappearing, and we need you. I get it. You might not have the money to donate. Many people are struggling right now. Please share our content, share our videos. It really matters. And if you do have some funds and want to help be part of the solution to solve homelessness, please visit invisiblepeople.tv/donate.
I was going to go back and get a house.
I consider homelessness absence of choice.
Yes.
True homelessness.
Yeah.
And that's what's the difference of a nomadic lifestyle, somebody living in their van, doing van life.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
like what you're, busking is when you decided, I'm going to change this, you can.
Yeah.
The people that get stuck on the streets or in a shelter or homeless hotels don't have a choice.
Yeah, it's a whole different bag.
Yeah.
I mean, I had my hardships, but nothing like the people that I've written most about. Because I write mostly about chronically homeless people.
Right. We'll get there. So you're busking.
Yeah. So I'm busking. I come back to America and I start my daily newspaper job. While I was in Europe, I spent some time working for the BBC as a grunt on the radio side.
Oh, wow, great.
Which was fun, but I wanted to write.
Yeah.
So came back here, started on the Lodi News Sentinel. I'd worked for the Fremont Argus, several little papers, and then the Oakland Tribune, and then the Chronicle. And along the way, I specialized in crime, disaster, and poverty, which is homelessness. And this was all through the 80s, when homelessness was becoming a thing.
Right.
I wanted particularly to write about those problems of poverty and homelessness because I wanted to figure it out. It was like a gift to be able to make a living writing about something that I wanted to figure out.
Right.
And I loved that.
Right.
And I still love it. You never have it all figured out.
Right. You don't. You're writing, and you can tell the stories in the book or any characters or however you want to go there. You really tell the story of the person in a very human way.
Yeah, that's what I love doing. A lot of reporting on homelessness and on poverty is about what went wrong, what's gone wrong, whose money's being wasted, who died in what complex somewhere. And yes, I do have to do those stories too. I still speak in present tense because
Right. Yeah.
I've only been gone a month from and I loved working for the Chronicle. I was there 32 years. It was a dream job for me.
In today's world, somebody loving, the newspaper they work for, right, is almost a miracle.
You do it because you want to do it, not because you're trying to get rich. I did it because I like to write, like to meet people, like to have adventures, and I had plenty of adventures doing it, and want to make a difference in the world. So doing those stories at the Chronicle, I wanted to, it's just endlessly curious is how I approach my work. So I wanted to get to the real lives of the people I was writing about. Because there's a reason why someone who was born with nothing, no bad choices in mind, because you're a baby, you grow up, fate, bad luck, choices, things happen.
Systemic crisis, affordable housing, racism.
All that.
Right. Foster care, domestic violence, drugs, mental illness.
And it's a whole range of things. So I'm interested in figuring out what led someone to where they are and having conversations with those people. It's almost like a public service to someone when you write about them because you're showing them a mirror of themselves.
This is interesting to me because I've known you online for years. We've only met a couple times.
Right.
And today I watched you on a keynote panel and it was like, he's a nice guy. He's like a really nice guy. And it made sense to me, because you meet people that are experiencing homelessness and you're like, oh my gosh, I want to know this person.
Yeah.
And not everybody has that.
A lot of people recoil. People who don't do this do writing for a living
Right.
in particular, because you're Joe or Joni normal and you're walking down the street and you see someone in a tent, shooting up, throwing up, not washed, all the range of things that happen when you're your most desperate form of chronic homelessness. And I think a lot of people don't want to talk to someone like that. For me, I
Right.
want to talk to someone
Right.
like that.
That's what I read. It's like, holy schmo, he's a super nice guy. Right? And you're curious and you love stories.
I love people. I think everyone everyone
That
should
comes
have
across.
a chance.
That comes across.
When I was, 16 and, building my furniture in the garage, I would wake up every morning and I'd look in the mirror and 10 times I would say to myself, I feel great.
Yeah.
It was motivating myself.
Yeah.
And people can be motivated. God, I've known so many people who are stuck in their survival mode.
Yeah.
And it's a tragedy that shouldn't happen.
I am living proof, and there's many others, I'm not the only one, that all people need is a chance, just some help.
Yeah.
Some people need more help, some people need less. We need to help our homeless neighbors get out of that situation.
Yeah, you are living proof. And the fact that you're pursuing what you do, telling the stories and illuminating people is wonderful, because you have a legitimacy that is rare.
Yeah. If you started in the 80s, there was no such thing as chronic homelessness back then. So what have you seen? How has homelessness changed in all this time? 40 years, 42 years?
There's some more understanding for it. Oh, God, I wrote an essay a little while ago about how when I was sleeping in my car at San Jose State, the cops would come by, rap on the window and say, move on, bum. Back in the 70s, it was bums and winos and vagrants and drifters and, all the words we don't use today because they hurt. Through the 80s, I watched this explode and then metastasize into chronic homelessness. First, it was just a lot of people started showing up in the streets. They did shelters, okay, that'll help. Could never get ahead of the problem. There were so many programs that were cut at that time that have never been restored. As a country, we just can't get ahead of the problem.
Yeah. And for those listening or watching, the big change in the 80s is Ronald Reagan the Reagan administration cut $15 billion worth of HUD funding and other things like food stamps, which is probably about $35 billion in today's money, and it hasn't been replaced. And that immediately created these mega nonprofits, these mega shelters. None of them existed. We didn't have the term chronic homelessness.
The trick and the magic bullet for homelessness is to prevent it from happening to begin with.
Yes,
and
very much so.
Today, if you take into account where people live and the cost of living and the things that they face in their daily life, we have about a 30% rate of people at or below poverty.
Yeah.
How can you prevent homelessness if you have that? Half of the kids born in America were born under Medicaid, which is it's medical insurance for poor people.
Right.
It's ludicrous to think that you can eliminate homelessness when the fountain for it doesn't get reduced.
Right. I say it like this. We've gotten much better at closing the back door. I know here in Los Angeles, they're housing more people than they ever have every single day. However, there's more people entering into homelessness than the system can possibly get out. And then people say, well, California's spending billions of dollars and homelessness is growing. Yeah, you left the front door open.
That's exactly it. In San Francisco, for every one person who gets housed off the street, 4 more take their place.
Wow.
How can you possibly get ahead of that?
Yeah. And then San Francisco, this is a great little segue here, is kind of its own unique city in many ways. But when it comes to homelessness, right?
Yeah.
And the Tenderloin is one of my favorite places.
You also see an astonishing range of people in the Tenderloin. It's got a lot of the soup kitchens, the services there, so it draws people there. A lot of supportive housing hotels are more than 100 years old. They're these beautiful old hotels, hard to maintain because they're so old.
Right.
But there's a lot of art going on in the Tenderloin. It was the Castro
Yes,
before the
yes,
Castro.
yes.
There's an astonishing array of diversity there. There's a lot of Southeast Asian
That's what I meant by
families.
saying culture, is that I love the diversity that's
It's
there.
wonderful. You can get all kinds of different food, meet different people. I like walking around in the
I
Tenderloin.
totally do. And I even how the name came about.
There are a couple different
Right. I don't
theories
know
for
if
that.
it's folklore or, whatever.
Yeah.
The story I know is that meat was cheaper, and the police,
The cops. Yeah.
cops would start going, let's go, get some tenderloins.
That's
they would
it.
go to the butcher shop.
That's what I've heard, too.
And it actually, became branded the tenderloin. Unique to San Francisco is, from my experience, I mean, you live there, is that is where the affordable housing crisis. You had, the technology boom, Silicon Valley, rents started skyrocketing. Now it's across the country, but San Francisco was a town where rents were really getting out of control, yet that was creating more poverty without any more services. So you have extreme poverty butted up against extreme wealth.
Yeah, and the challenge is that it's a 7x7 island, essentially. There's not a whole lot of places to expand, unlike somewhere like New York, although Manhattan is an island, of course, but it's got boroughs. You can expand. Other cities, Salt Lake City in particular, they've managed to end chronic homelessness some years ago, and they got out of hand again. But they had capabilities. They had room to build and to convert. Houston, other places. San Francisco, Philip Mangano, who was George Bush and then Obama's national homeless czar, said San Francisco has the most visible manifestation of homelessness, which I think he put his finger on there. It's all downtown,
Right.
as opposed to being pushed out somewhere else, which makes it, there's this continuous problem, because getting ahead of the problem enough, people get the impression that it's being solved is very hard. I mean, you can sweep people, push them to other neighborhoods. I think the city tries really hard to help. It's housed an enormous amount of people. It's resolved homelessness for an enormous amount of people. It's the inflow. That's the problem, is the inflow.
So my favorite, before I go on, Utah has a great story. I don't know if you know Lloyd Pendleton.
I knew him really well. I went in 2014, spent a week with him and looking at their wonderful programs where they got chronic homelessness down to statistical zero.
Right. Lloyd came out of retirement. This might happen to you.
Yes.
On a bet that he could end homelessness.
I know.
And he came very close. And then when he actually retired, the new people didn't follow the same strategy.
Yeah.
And that's what's happened. When, the top leadership changes, I don't know how you could say, oh, we almost ended homelessness. Let's try something different.
The best you can do, as far as I can see,
Yeah.
is hit that functional zero, they call it. It's statistical, functional. And Lloyd did that, and it was wonderful. My photographer partner, Brant Ward, we were a team for years covering homelessness. We spent that week in Salt Lake, and loved seeing it. It was really, really inspiring. And then, like you say, every new person who comes in charge of a city or a county or anywhere has to make their mark and maybe change things a little bit. It didn't keep up.
Yeah. So with over 5,000 articles, and one of the things that I think is brilliant and that you had the resources to do, and the Chronicle reinforced your ability to do that, was to follow people. So it wasn't just a one-off. Oh, here's the story of Jim. You would connect with people. So tell us about the people in your book.
Thank you. The book is called The Lost and the Found, a true story of homelessness, found family, and second chances. And you're right. I have followed quite a few people over the years, which can be very difficult, because finding some people, if they're truly homeless, bouncing in and out of the system, is difficult. Because you might get a phone if you're in the street, an Obama phone as they call it, but it's invariably going to get crushed, lost, stolen, whatever.
Or they can't get it charged.
Yeah, but with this one, it spans what is it now, 22 years. The book itself, I finished it more than a year ago, which is funny. The books, I'm used to writing stories where they're in there the next day in the paper.
Right.
Yeah, but this one, I took 3 years between go and whoa, and I wrote it pretty quickly, but there's all kinds of other stuff that you got to do. Started with Rita Grant. In 2003, we got new editors, and one of them, Robert Rosenthal, was walking around in downtown, and he saw a guy stuff a bird up under his jacket, cracked its neck, and stuffed it up in a like he was going to eat it. And he saw all the homeless people in the street, and he said, Jesus, we got to do something to report about this.
Right.
And he had me and Brant Ward, photographer, spend 6 months in the street writing about this. And we slept out a lot, but a lot of times we went home, got a shower. We didn't pretend we were homeless. We just immersed.
Immersive.
It was wonderful. I absolutely loved it because we got to spend a lot of time with a homeless family living in a van over in Golden Gate Park in the Mission District, all these various areas of the city. And one place we spent as much time as anywhere else was Homeless Island, a cement triangle at right downtown, just a couple blocks from City Hall, where a dozen drug-addicted homeless people lived. And Rita was one of them. And she was addicted to crack and heroin and had AIDS and abscesses that were shocking. They were going to kill her. Her boyfriend was this really nice, gentle guy named Tommy, also addicted to heroin and crack. When I'd sleep over on the island, he'd wake up in the morning and he had this abscess on his ankle where he had to peel the shoe tongue out of it. So it sounded like a Velcro.
Well, you would sleep out with people, and with your photographer?
Brant wasn't out there as much as me.
Right.
He shot it. He did great photos.
Yeah, those must be awesome. But how do you build trust? I was going to ask you for tips and tricks later, but this is the perfect. You're a stranger, you're a reporter. You've got to build a good rapport to be able to do that.
Pretty much. Life is showing up. I showed up. Yeah. And Brant showed up. Now, Brant was able to shoot his photos. I always like immersing. I wanted more. I wanted those moments at 2 a.m. I wanted those moments when they woke up when Tommy would peel his shoe tongue out of his leg.
Right.
And plus, I'd slept outside plenty of times as a street singer, and but the car's safer. But
I don't know many journalists that do that. It's so immersive.
It was fun. Dale Maharaj is a guy who's done that too. He's a friend of mine. Great reporter. He went all around, and he's a professor at Columbia now.
Oh, wow.
And his partner, a guy named Michael, was a photographer. He's at the Washington Post.
Wow.
Back to the island.
You're talking about Rita and her partner.
Yeah, and her partner, Tommy. That abscess he got turned into flesh-eating disease, necrosis, and he died of it. Essentially ate him alive and rotted him. Brant and I went and found his body. Everyone on the island was wondering where's Tommy? And we came back, and Rita freaked out. Everyone freaked out. Yeah. It was a traumatic event. And I put that in the story that I eventually wrote about Homeless Island. But the way that I was able to sleep out alongside folks is, for one, I'd slept outside before. I mean, if you're homeless and it's a bunch of people, it's not like a club. Right. Hey, you're going to crash here? Sure. Just don't get in my way. Great. And as time went by, I got to know the Islanders really well. Right. And I liked them. They could see that I was sincere about wanting to really know their story.
Being authentic.
Yeah, because homeless people have wonderful bullshit detectors.
I was just you read my captions.
Yeah, they can tell if you're putting it on or just there to grab a quote. But the island was really wonderfully condensed example of how desperate life can become when you're on the very, very bottom. Rita's family read this story that I did as part of a 5-day series called Shame of the City that ran after our 6 months on the street. They realized the severity of it, the location, everything. Sister and daughter flew out here, got Rita, took her home. She rehabbed beautifully. That's something that always really touched me. We became friends for the next several decades.
Wow.
A few years ago, Tyson Filzer, the other main character in the book, was sitting on a piece of cardboard on the Embarcadero, the waterfront.
Yeah.
And I was out doing a story about the possibility of a shelter opening up. He was up front about he smoked meth, shot heroin, and we had a great conversation. Because I got him in between being dope sick. His level head. Yeah. I thought, boy, that he's got some smarts and some wise things to say. His brother lived in Ohio still lives in Ohio, and read that story online and said, Jesus, that's my brother. I haven't seen him in 7 years. He calls me and says, help me find him. We went back out to that corner where, of course, he wasn't anymore. He was just hanging. But looked all over the city, found him in a day.
Yeah.
And it was lucky that I knew usual places to look. And we made some connections. It worked out wonderfully because Barron, Tyson's brother, rented a hotel room. We brought him back to the hotel room and did an intervention right there. Barron had a wonderful interventionist named Vicky that he hired.
Right.
Because
Wow.
before he came out here, he did a GoFundMe. He raised enough money to put Tyson into rehab.
Right.
And I was in the room there too with the photographer, Nick Otto, great photographer. Long ago, I decided, I'm going to be a human being when I'm dealing with these folks. And so my part of the conversation was, Tyson, this is a chance, man. You got to take this. And interventionist Vicky said, are you ready to take the help? He was ready.
Yeah.
And Barron, it was really emotional because he was really ready to go. So he participated in the rehab. And I can't give away the end of the book.
Right. It's good tease. Well, what's the website?
The website is kevinfaganwriter.com. The book is available everywhere.
Wherever you buy books.
Right.
It's Simon & Schuster.
Yep.
Which is a big one.
Yeah, and it was really nice. They've been very supportive. I loved the editors, the whole support team there. It was interesting because I was used to having a really good support team at the Chronicle and at my papers that I worked at. These guys were terrific, and they cared. Right. My agent, Larry Weissman, the one who shopped it around and found the publisher, he cared. He helped me do the proposal. There's a whole different world that goes on doing a book.
Oh, I bet.
And it's been interesting.
Yeah.
With Rita, I got to know that family, and they're wonderful people, and they are so supportive of Rita and her whole saga. I won't give away the ending of that too. She just blossomed, and to see her connect with her people again was a joy.
Amazing experience, but reconnection can be tricky. Families can be the cause of homelessness.
Sure.
Yeah.
And the reconnection doesn't always work.
Right.
Hey, I'll read you a little bit from the book.
Please.
The time when I met Rita. This is 2003. And I'm describing a little bit about the context of what Brant and I are doing. This is chapter 2. The world of the most desperately homeless is a world all unto itself. Most people going about their daily business see the surface, like folks sitting on cardboard with bags or panhandling signs, and mostly just keep walking by. Rita's homeless island stuck out like a human landslide. If you rolled by the island a few times in the spring of 2003, you couldn't help but notice Rita or her boyfriend, Tommy, standing in between the traffic lanes holding cardboard signs reading Rita's favorite, which was, quote, hunger hurts, anything helps, or Tommy's favorite, quote, anything helps, even a smile, or Little Bit, another one of the characters on the island, walking across the traffic island. Here, at one of the busiest corners in San Francisco, looking for all the world like a lost little girl, which is what her Johns thought she was. That's why they'd drive up from places like Palo Alto in BMWs and the like to screw her at $50 a throw in the back seat. She was tough like a rat, snarling, telling you to fuck off, or just plain giving you the cold shoulder until she got to know you. Then she was heartbreaking, telling you about how she missed her 4 children, how she wanted a house with a yard and flowers, how she wanted love, how she actually found it a few times in her life and had never given up hope of someday finding something that would last. That was the kind of people that I was dealing with.
Right, that's powerful because you described in almost street language what's going on, survival sex and everything else. She really wanted a house. She wanted, the white picket fence dream that we all want, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I tried to write a line between street language because I wanted to reflect the real world,
right,
and the more polite language.
Right.
People experiencing homelessness. When I was homeless, I wasn't experiencing homeless. I was homeless.
Right. Right.
And you talk to someone like Little Bit, she said, I'm a hoe.
Right.
Not
exactly.
a sex worker in the street. But words have impact, and you're writing to a wider audience. So it's a little tricky between authenticity and diplomacy.
Right. That's a good way to put it.
It was a challenge.
Yeah. So while I have you there, what tips could you give to journalists writing about homelessness?
Spend time. It's what I give to normal people, well, so-called normal people who are housed and don't spend time with homeless people. Stop and talk to someone when you're passing them by. Give them the moment of dignity dignity, but let them be seen. And so as a reporter, you need to see the person you're talking to. Don't just grab a quote, wince at the track marks on the arm, and split. Really, really pay attention and try to paint that into whatever story you're doing. Because a lot of our stories are just daily quickies. And you're not going to know the full panoply of what led them to the street. But try to see the human being.
Yeah. Any advice on walking up to people?
As a reporter, don't walk up with your notepad in your hand and the pen in the other and say, "Hello, sir. I would like to talk to you about homelessness." No. So leave the notebook in your pocket for a while. Just chew the fat for a minute. "Hey, how you doing? It's a nice day, huh? How's the panhandling doing? What'd you eat today? Nice clothes. Hey, it looks like you got a good pair of shoes there." Yeah, be a human. As a housed person who doesn't really deal with homeless people mostly or ever, if someone is having an episode where they're muttering to themselves, rocking back and forth, looking angry, or comatose or something, that's not where you're going to have a conversation. Then you'll be talking to the addiction or the mental episode. Find someone who's got their stuff together enough to have a conversation and have a conversation.
I do the same thing. If somebody has severe mental illness or isn't severely intoxicated, I do interview people that are high or that have mental illness, but they can't be in an episode.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And to me, there's all kinds of reasons, but me, it's just a respect thing.
People can be high and they can, and if they're, sure, if you're mentally ill, doesn't mean you're not a person.
Right. How was your relationship with your editors? You're pitching to them the stories that you want to cover.
It was kind of a combination with Rita. I was assigned to be in the street, but then Rosie gave me free hand to come back with what I wanted to come back with. And, some people spend a year researching a story, especially on the kind of depth and breadth that Brant and I were doing. We decided on the first day, we said, we're not going to piss around. We want to get right to it. We want to figure out what works. We want to see the depth of it. And we'd both been reporters or journalists for quite a while, and we'd done homeless stories before, many of them. Yeah. So we said, let's just cut right to it. So we didn't mess around. We worked fast. I like working fast.
Because journalists these days might not have an editor, or they might be doing multiple beats, not just homelessness.
Yeah.
Any advice or thoughts on, making the pitch to your editor?
I say it's kind of like selling shoes. You got to sell your editor, just like you have to sell the sources. Yeah. With Tyson, when his brother called me, I thought, okay, I'll help this guy out. I didn't know it was going to be a story at first. And then I talked to my editor and he said, maybe you should write about that. I said, well, we'll see what happens. Yeah. So I took a notebook and then it turned into a story, and they were very receptive. At the Chronicle, if you have a good story that is going to tell it, they'll let you roll. It is good in journalism to specialize. Specialize if you're a city hall reporter, a crime reporter, homeless reporter.
Normally I ask people any last thoughts or words, which is fine, but you seem to want to read another section.
I don't want to leave Tyson out.
Yeah, so why don't you read a little bit of Tyson?
There's a moment that really struck me that I led off my first story about Tyson with. It's where we'd been looking all day. One of Tyson's friends called Barron, his brother, and said, hey, Tyson's right here, right now. Come on over. You can see him. Right. So our photographer happened to live right above that corner. So he came down, shot the photo. Barron had a recorder on the whole time. So I was able to reconstruct this encounter at the time. So this is what happened the minute Barron met Tyson in the Tenderloin. Time froze just long enough to hear the crunch of discarded needles and glass meth pipes underfoot, long enough to hear the low murmur of a dozen or so homeless people sitting or sprawled on the sidewalk all around them in the darkness, long enough for Barron to focus in on the face of this brother whom until this evening he hadn't been sure was still alive. Tyson spoke first, quietly. Hey, Barron. Relief and sadness swept over Barron, but he knew he had to keep his cool. Don't mess this up. Keep it simple. How you doing, man? Tyson stared, miles of hard times in his face mixed with a note of disbelief. Seconds passed. Nice to see you, Tyson said, and he stuck out his hand. Nice to see you. Give me a hug. Barron pulled him close. It's just, the moment of two people connecting, I thought was it moved me. And then from then on, we go to the hotel, we do the intervention, and we follow Tyson as he goes.
What page again?
The page is kevinfaganwriter.com.
Yeah.
And it's got reviews and excerpts and, fun stuff.
Well, thank you very much for spending time with us.
Thank you, Mark. I could talk all day about this. You're a great guy to talk with.
We could go forever.
Yeah. And thank you for doing what you do, because you keep a light lit, and I've appreciated it.